Live from London, this is BBC News. Israel's military says Iran has launched a ballistic missile attack towards northern Israel and that its defense systems are intercepting the threat. The attack comes after Israel carried out deadly strikes on what it said were Hezbollah targets in the southern districts of the Lebanese capital Beirut. President Trump tells US media he's going to call Prime Minister Netanyahu right now and tell him not to strike back. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky concludes defence talks with the leaders of the UK, France and Germany at Downing Street. And the Danish footballer Christian Eriksen, who had a cardiac arrest in the Euros in 2021, collapses on the pitch again. Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm Mark Lowen. We start with the breaking news in the Middle East over the last couple of hours that Israel has been targeted by a barrage of Iranian missiles for the first time since an April ceasefire came into place between Washington and Tehran. There you can hear the sirens sounding over northern Israel. All schools will be closed on Monday, suggesting they believe the Iranian missile strikes could continue. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says the attack marked the beginning of a full week of continuous strikes. Donald Trump has been briefed on the situation. And this is the scene live in Haifa in northern Israel. Israel says it intercepted the missiles and there are no reports of injuries. We're also following reports in the last hour of closures to airspace in the region. This flight radar shows a live look at the region. AFP, citing Iranian state media, says that Iran is closing airspace over the country's west. Iraq says its airspace will close for 72 hours for reasons related to air traffic safety. And the Reuters news agency is also reporting that Syria has suspended operations at Damascus airport and is closing airspace in the south of the country for 12 hours. These pictures are from Kermanshah, a city in Iran's west. People there can be heard cheering as they see missiles pass overhead. They were broadcast on a semi-official news agency sponsored by the Iranian government. The attack comes after Israel carried out deadly strikes on what it said were Hezbollah targets in southern districts of the Lebanese capital Beirut. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have warned Israel to stop its attacks. And we've just got these pictures in. These are projectiles seen over Petah Tikva in Israel. Let us speak to. Well, that's the latest in the region. We've had some reaction from the US. President Trump has said that he would call the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and press him to not retaliate. In a phone interview with Fox News, he also urged Iran to return to the negotiating table. Tom Simons has more on the response from the Trump administration so far.
The president was briefed about this attack within 10, 15, 20 minutes, really, of it happening, according to White House sources. What Fox News is reporting is that they have, I think, put in a call to Donald Trump, who sometimes answers the phone these days to US correspondents. And what he said, according to Fox News, is, what I would suggest to Iran, you've shot your missiles, that's enough. Strikes not helping negotiations, get back to the table, make a deal, not happy about strikes on Beirut. The problem for Donald Trump is, of course, that Iran wants an end to strikes on Lebanon, pretty much, it seems, before it will sign up for the deal that he hopes to push through. And there have been strikes on Lebanon in the last few days, and that has made his negotiating position a lot more difficult. So I think we can judge from this that he appears to be angry with both sides of this. He last week effectively tore a strip off the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and here he is saying to Iran, to Tehran, get back to the negotiating table, not happy with strikes on Beirut.
And yet again, Tom, a vivid illustration of the fact that the US's war goals in Iran, namely the destruction of Iran's nuclear program, the destruction of its missile program, simply have not been met, and so likely to prompt yet more political heat for Donald Trump as we lead towards the midterms in November.
Absolutely. Only yesterday, when clips were released from an interview which was fully broadcast today by NBC, Meet the Press, Donald Trump was asked about his claims that the Iranian military had been destroyed. He's claimed that in the past. And he said, well, actually, quite a significant stock of missiles and drones still existed. And when pushed, he said that about 21% was still in existence, so hadn't been destroyed. And that's clearly been demonstrated today with this latest attack. He says that they've taken apart the Israeli military, but that's not the case. This whole thing is a sort of game of Jenga, isn't it? You move one piece and something else moves, and the whole thing has a risk of falling down at any point. But for him, he has to get several things in line. He has to get Iran happy with the situation in Lebanon. He has to get Israel happy that it's got control of its own security. He has to get Lebanon happy that it can handle what's going on with Hezbollah. And then that's before we even get to the nuclear materials inside Iran that the Americans want to get rid of, and the money that Iran wants to be unfrozen. So in the middle of all this, there's now this latest missile strike.
That's Tom Simons in Washington, and Israeli media is now reporting that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have held a phone call. Donald Trump, of course, very, very determined to try to push the peace deal forward, but very little sign that is now happening with this escalation. Let's just show you the scene in Haifa in northern Israel, where it is nighttime. Of course, there were sirens there. That's where the missiles were fired to. Reports also that Israeli schools are being closed for a number of days, and as I mentioned, also with airspace now being closed across the region. Let us get the latest now from our correspondent Wira Davis, who is live with us from Jerusalem. Wira, it looks like the Israeli Prime Minister and American President have spoken. That is likely to have been a pretty uncomfortable phone call.
Yeah, I think so. That's a bit of an understatement. Given that only a week ago we know there was a very expletive-laden, very tense phone call between the two when the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had let it be known that he wanted to attack Hezbollah positions in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. That would have clearly, made things a lot worse across the region. And Donald Trump made it absolutely clear that Netanyahu was not to do that. Well, of course, in the last 24 hours, that is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu did, and it brought a predictable response from the Iranians. In the last day, everybody in Israel has been anticipating an Iranian response, and that came tonight in the form of about 10 missiles or so being launched from Iran, particularly against parts of northern Israel. There were eyewitness accounts of interceptions over the large northern Israeli city of Haifa. Nothing is thought to have landed, but with those missiles came a warning from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards that this was just the start of a week-long campaign of missile strikes against Israel, and that Iran would be firing around the clock. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. It's brought a very stern response from the hardline of Israeli politics. The Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said tonight that Iran or Tehran must burn. One can quite easily see how this whole thing could escalate unless Donald Trump and others can persuade both the Iranians and the Israelis to pull back from the brink.
Yeah, and give us a sense a bit more about that. We're about the sort of tensions that there are, because of course Benjamin Netanyahu being pushed by Donald Trump to hold back and for this peace deal to be achieved. But then, of course, Israeli domestic politics very much pushing for the war in Lebanon to continue, and Benjamin Netanyahu facing elections later on this year. So he's kind of backed himself into a corner now, and between two different sides.
Indeed, it's far more complicated, I think, to be frank, than Donald Trump thinks it is to get a peace deal. But I think the Americans and the Iranians genuinely do want some sort of deal to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened. But that is much easier said than done. There are those on the hard line of Israeli politics, Benjamin Netanyahu, and those ministers I've mentioned, like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and others, who clearly feel that the job is not yet done in Iran. They would like to see, for example, regime change in Iran. Well, that certainly isn't going to happen anytime soon. The Israelis also feel that for as long as the Iranian proxy Hezbollah remains a threat in Lebanon, that Israel has the right to go after Hezbollah in Lebanon. We've got thousands of Israeli troops invading and occupying parts of southern Lebanon, and now again we've had Israel pushing the button again by attacking Hezbollah positions in Beirut. So it's very difficult to see, despite those very frank phone calls between Washington, the White House, and Benjamin Netanyahu, how this thing can be resolved very quickly, particularly, as you say, because there is divided political opinion here in Israel. And many Israelis do support their country's war aims. Benjamin Netanyahu himself is not very popular, but those on the right of his government, those in his cabinet, will not be disappointed, I think, that the peace talks are again floundering.
Yeah, and not just Itamar Ben-Gvir. I'm just reading here that Naftali Bennett, also a political rival to Netanyahu, who stands a good chance of succeeding him, I think, has posted saying this is the moment of truth. Is Israel a sovereign state that can defend itself? Containment or a symbolic response would signal to our enemies that the spilling of our citizens' blood is permissible. Therefore, Israel needs to act powerfully and effectively. Once again, highlighting the domestic pressures that Netanyahu is under. Weera, thanks very much indeed for the time being. Let's cross over now to John Sudworth, who is our correspondent in Beirut. John, once again, a very clear illustration of how the war in Lebanon and the war in Iran are just intimately linked, and the clear retaliation by Iran, for in its words, for what Israel has done in Beirut today.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mark. It's become increasingly clear in recent weeks that the conflict here in Lebanon, you could say, just like the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, is a parallel and complicating obstacle to America's efforts to strike that peace deal with Iran over the war that it started back in late February along with Israel. And although the centrality now of Lebanon to that solution may appear to have taken the White House by surprise, there are plenty of critics in this region who will say that the risks were there all along. Hezbollah, of course, joined that war in early March in support of Iran and began firing its rockets over Israel's border. Israel has been hitting back, and it's been desperate to hit Hezbollah targets here in Beirut, mostly in the suburb in the south, the Dahir suburb, where Hezbollah is known to be strong. And America has found itself in this peculiar position of attempting to impose restraint on Israel, reining its military ambitions in for fear of exactly this scenario. Because Iran has been saying that were Israel to strike Beirut, it would see it as essentially bringing the peace negotiations to an end and risking a further escalation. And what do we have today? Well, Israel hit Beirut, and we now have Iranian missiles in the sky above this region once again. I think a couple of important things to note. Reporting out of Washington, Mark, suggesting that President Trump is saying that he isn't happy that Israel hit Beirut today. He did not give them authorization for that strike, the reporting suggests. Now that, of course, calls into question just how much influence Washington still has over Israeli military policy. And the second thing to note is that in those same interviews, President Trump is calling for Iran to stop this barrage of missiles and return to the negotiating table. Some people may see a very weak sanction in all that, again suggesting that Iran may think it has the upper hand, that it is free from any real possibility of American pressure. It thinks it is winning this war. So it all goes to show there are very few good answers in this conflict that was begun by the US and Israel a few months ago, and America itself is struggling to find any meaningful answers.
John, let's just go back to what ostensibly prompted this missile barrage, those attacks in Beirut. Give us a sense of the scene there and how significant those attacks were in the southern suburbs.
Well, Beirut has become a sort of geopolitical struggle of its own within the wider Lebanon war at the moment. And in some senses, what's happening here in Beirut pales into insignificance when compared to what's happening in the south of Lebanon, where Israel's ground offensive and war bombardments have continued almost every day and have been intensifying. But Beirut has been a special case for those political reasons. There have been one or two targeted strikes in recent weeks, but that sense of restraint, that idea that Washington is imposing this restraint on Israeli action, has been there. So very significant today that we had another strike in the Dahir suburb. We've seen these pictures before, a 7-story apartment block with the two stories on the lower floors blown out. People rushing to take the injured to hospital. A number of lives reported to have been lost, and rubble and twisted metal strewn across the road. That strike came with a warning from the Israeli military that more would come. So it really looked like, from Israel's point of view, this was a loss of patience. They were reporting that 2 Hezbollah projectiles did indeed cross their border earlier today. Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for those projectiles. And so here we are again, and it looks like Israel has lost patience. It has all along, despite that American pressure, been claiming the right to defend itself and to hit Beirut if it needs to. But we obviously now have this escalation that everybody feared would be the very result that would follow.
Yeah, indeed. John in Beirut, thanks very much. We've actually had a couple of comments from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. It has warned that any actions by Israel against Iran or Lebanon will be met with, in its words, a crushing response. And also another line saying that the ceasefire in Lebanon was an integral part of the ceasefire reached in April with Washington, of course, once again showing just how hard it will be to uncouple the Lebanon war from the Iran war, as Donald Trump wants to be the case, and once again prompting fears that the situation is spiralling out of control, and certainly out of the control of Donald Trump. Well, we can bring you more now from the Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson, Brigadier General Efi Defrin. He has said that Iran has made a grave mistake, and in a briefing which was delivered in Hebrew, he says that the Israeli military will not allow continued fire from Iran towards Israel's citizens. He says Israel is prepared for the possibility of additional fire, and added that air defense systems are deployed across the entire country, and that the IDF's Chief of General Staff is holding a situational assessment following the attacks. He said the IDF will continue to operate throughout Lebanon and will deepen the blow to the Hezbollah terrorist organization. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has met Sir Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Downing Street today. They discussed how to use the upcoming G7 summit in Evian, the next meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, and the NATO summit in Ankara to best coordinate further support for Ukraine. The leaders also underlined the urgent need to scale up the production of interceptors and co-develop anti-ballistic missile and deep strike capabilities. For more on this, I spoke a little bit earlier to Hannah Shelest, who is the Director for Security Studies at the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian PRISM. She detailed what she thought President Zelensky would be looking for from these European leaders at today's meetings.
We already know what's being expected. It is definitely discussions about the increase of the supply of the ammunition for Ukraine for the air defense. We understand that despite all the Ukrainian attacks against the Russian territories now, but Russia still had a significant amount of the ballistic missiles. And just within the last few weeks, we had several very damaging attacks against Kyiv, against Odessa, and against other cities. So the unity of the European states, the necessity to find where to find these air defense missiles, because most of them originally been going from the United States, that's the issues that four leaders needed to discuss.
And I suppose President Zelensky comes into this meeting with renewed confidence. I was reading that in May, it was the second month in Ukraine in which Ukraine managed to recapture more territory than it lost. So a sense that Ukraine is beginning to turn the tide militarily in this war, as we saw also from those Ukrainian drones hitting St. Petersburg.
Partially, yes, definitely. All of us needed some success at the battlefield, but at the same time, we perfectly understand that the battlefield is more than 1,000 kilometers. So there are some pieces of it where Ukraine is even advancing, but at the same time, we still have very difficult situation when we speak about the Donetsk region, for example, around Konstantinovka, also because of the attacks against the whole territory of Ukraine. That's why the successes like St. Petersburg, on the one hand, it is very symbolic because it is city of President Putin. It is the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. But at the same time, it's very practical because in Kronstadt, we had a significant amount of the munition which Russia could use against Ukraine. So now we see a different tactic of Ukraine. If it is the stalemate at the front line, we need to destroy Russian logistics and we need to destroy stockpiles of ammunition in addition to the refineries that allowed both income of the Russian budget, but also supply of the military, because any kind of the military needs petrol.
Given those recent successes by Ukraine, Hannah, what is your sense of where Ukrainian public opinion now lies regarding a potential deal which could potentially, cede control of the Donbass to Russia? And potentially recognise Russia's takeover of Crimea? Or has this change in kind of the military circumstances given Ukraine a sense that actually, let's fight on, we can win this?
If you speak about the public opinion, it has not changed. Ukraine and Ukrainians always said that we don't need Russian territory, but we would like to have our territory back. And it doesn't mean we're losing or we are winning at the battlefield, because we are speaking about our people. For example, I cannot go to the cemetery where my grandma is, because that is currently under the front line. So in this case, definitely it is the certain optimism in the mood. It is the better negotiation position that Ukraine can have. But what is very important, you use the word deal. Ukrainians don't want deal, we want peace. And we understand that if we are just agreeing on some kind of the deal with Russians, Putin would accumulate the forces and in a year continue. And it would be good if it is only Ukraine that would be a new target, because we know that they would like to target other countries, including NATO countries as well. So in this case, we need peace, we need just peace, and we need the punishment of the aggressor. Otherwise, none of the countries that are not nuclear powers in this world would feel themselves safe.
Hannah Shelest there from Ukraine. Now, Christian Eriksen, the Danish footballer who had a cardiac arrest while playing in the Euros in 2021, has again collapsed whilst playing. He was playing in a friendly in Denmark against Ukraine. When the match was stopped and abandoned, he was able to walk from the field but was taken to hospital for further examinations. The Danish team doctor said Eriksen is doing well. Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes has the latest from the BBC Sports Centre.
This wasn't a World Cup warm-up match. Neither of those teams had qualified for the World Cup. It was an actual friendly in Odense, as I'm sure you've said. And it was midway through the second half that the incident happened. Now, we've actually heard from the doctor, from the Danish Football Federation doctor, and they said that he's doing well and that as far as they were concerned, the pacemaker did respond as it should do to whatever the situation with his heart was, and that he was briefly unconscious but regained consciousness very quickly, and they were very quickly in contact with him and dealt with him, and that he actually walked off the pitch. So, I mean, that's obviously really great news as far as Eriksen's future health is concerned, that he was able to walk away from the incident. They're saying that he will now undergo further examinations at the hospital to determine what caused it. Now, Eriksen, who's 34, was making his 151st international appearance. Now, as you know, as we all know, he does have this heart condition that was discovered at the Euros, which of course were the delayed Euros back in 2021, when he suffered that cardiac arrest during a match against Finland, and he was fitted with the pacemaker then. But when he wanted to return to football, he was playing at that time in Serie A for Inter Milan. He wasn't allowed to, because Italian football rules say that if you have a pacemaker, you can't play in Serie A. And that was what prompted him to then come back to the Premier League, where he then joined Brentford, and of course then went on to play for Manchester United. During his time there, he won the FA Cup and the League Cup, and was much loved by the United fans, and a real kind of character. But I think whenever you see Eriksen, we always think back to that occasion at the Euros where he suffered that cardiac arrest, because such a shocking thing for anyone to see in football. And obviously, it's not the first time that we've had cardiac issues with players in football. We're thinking, of course, of Fabrice Muamba from Bolton, when he had that cardiac arrest in the FA Cup and had to be resuscitated by a doctor back in 2012. And luckily, of course, he lived. But it's always shocking when these things happen. But we're waiting for more information out of the Danish Football Federation. But I say at the moment they are saying that he is well under the circumstances. The national team doctor, Morten Borsen, says he is doing well, and that he walked off the pitch by himself.
Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes from BBC Sport there. A reminder of our top story that Iran has fired a barrage of missiles at northern Israel, saying that this is the beginning of a full week of continuous strikes. Retaliation, it says, for Israel bombing Beirut. A lot now depends on what Israel will do in retaliation. We've got a live page up on our website with all the latest on this story. I'll be back with the headlines in a moment or two. Stay with us here on BBC News.
Hello there. The weather pattern for the second week of June is not really changing a great deal, so still very unsettled. It's going to be quite cool as well. Breezy at times over the week ahead. There will be some showers or some long spells of rain. All our weather continues to come in from the Atlantic. This low pressure will feed in some showers following this weather front, which has been bringing some rain already today, and that is continuing to work its way into more of England and Wales overnight, clearing away from Northern Ireland and perhaps Western Scotland away from these showers. Here temperatures will be down to 8-9 degrees, but elsewhere with cloud and some rain around more widely, temperatures down to 12-13 degrees. We start with the cloud and rain. It will push its way towards the southeast, and following on from that, we're going to get some sunshine. There will be some showers, particularly building through the day in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. And before the rain finally clears away from East Anglia in the southeast in the afternoon, there could be some heavy and thundery bursts. Whilst we're introducing some sunshine and showers mainly in the west, we're all going to find temperatures lower on Monday. It's going to be a cooler, fresher feeling day. And we're into the same cooler, fresher air for the middle part of the week. Low pressure close by and a run of westerly winds. Now on Tuesday, there'll be some sunshine, but showers are never too far away. They'll develop more widely, some of them heavy with some thunder as well. And on Wednesday, most of the showers will be in the east.
I'm Dwayne Fields, and I'm on an epic adventure in Zambia. Join me as I take on the power of the Zambezi River, get up close with incredible wildlife, and make a splash on the edge of the mighty Victoria Falls. That's the travel show in Zambia on BBC News.
North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un will receive a very special guest on Monday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping. We're expecting red carpets and an open-top car cruising down the streets of Pyongyang. But beyond the fanfare, this is a chance for Kim Jong-un to show off how powerful he has become. And for more on that, you can join me, Jay Kwon, on BBC News.
I'm on a Turkish adventure, combining my love of food with history. And in the country's southeast, the dishes echo the old spice routes and the stories reach back to the dawn of civilization. Join me, Julie Lynn, for World's Ultimate Adventures. Watch on iPlayer.
Got that indefinable something that is the best in America.
I never did know your name.
Yes, you do.
Dolly Parton is one of the most phenomenal songwriters.
Isn't it amazing what some people do for attention?
Camera just loves some people, and it sure loves Marilyn.
I've always depended on myself.
The pop art that Andy created radiates Americanness.
Thank you. Good night.
The story of American art is as epic as the story of America itself.
Hit the road with us for America season. Watch on BBC4 and iPlayer.
Women, natural-born storytellers, pearls of wisdom, fighting talk, speaking truth to power, quietly active or loudly roaring. Every woman has a story to tell. Let's hear them. Global Women, a series of inspiring stories. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Sometimes our thoughts can tie us up in knots. In my podcast with expert guests, we help untangle it all. One topic at a time. Complex with me, Kimberly Wilson. Listen on BBC Sounds.
This is BBC News, the headlines. Israel's military says Iran has launched a ballistic missile attack towards northern Israel, the first since the ceasefire began, but its defense systems intercepted the threat. The attack comes after Israel carried out deadly strikes on what it said were Hezbollah targets in the southern districts of the Lebanese capital Beirut. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky concludes defense talks with the leaders of the UK, France and Germany at Downing Street. And the Danish footballer Christian Eriksen, who had a cardiac arrest in the Euros in 2021, collapses on the pitch again. Hello, I'm Mark Lowen. More now on our top story, that breaking news in the Middle East. Israel has been targeted by a barrage of Iranian missiles for the first time since an April ceasefire came into place between Washington and Tehran. Israel's military chief has vowed to respond and strike Iran with force as soon as the green light is given. We can hear there the sirens sounding over northern Israel. All schools will be closed on Monday, suggesting they believe the Iranian missile strikes could continue. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says the attack marked the beginning of what it said was a full week of continuous strikes. Donald Trump has been briefed on the situation. Saudi and Qatari foreign ministers have also discussed the latest development. Well, this is the scene live in Haifa in northern Israel. Israel says it has intercepted the missiles and there are no reports of injuries. Well, we're also following reports in the last hour or so of closures to airspace in the region. This flight radar shows a live look at the region. AFP, the news agency, citing Iranian state media, says Iran is closing airspace over the west of the country. Iraq says its airspace will close for 72 hours for reasons related to air traffic safety. The Reuters news agency is also reporting that Syria has suspended operations at Damascus airport and is closing its airspace in the south of the country for 12 hours. These pictures are from Kermanshah, a city in the west of Iran. People there can be heard cheering as they see missiles pass overhead. They were broadcast on a semi-official news agency sponsored by the Iranian government. Well, the attack comes after Israel carried out deadly strikes on what it said were Hezbollah targets in the southern districts of the Lebanese capital Beirut. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have warned Israel to stop the attacks. We're following reports in the US and Israeli media that President Donald Trump and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have now had a phone call. Earlier, President Trump told Fox News he would call the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and press him not to retaliate. In a phone interview, he also urged Iran to return to the negotiating table. Camelia Entekapifert is the editor-in-chief of The Independent Persian and an Iranian American. This week she wrote an op-ed reflecting on why she had voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and why she's now questioning the president. I started by asking her about her family back in Iran.
We were expecting this morning this escalation maybe happen between Iran and Israel. A serious threat from the Iranian politicians from early morning posted in defense of Lebanon and their commitment to support Hezbollah. And Israelis' allegation against of the Lebanon, especially the attack in Zahiya and central Lebanon, I guess it gets this opportunity to the Iranians to tonight attack Israel. So the ceasefire was very fragile. Today marked the 100 days of this war. And even Iranian inside Iran, you just mentioned my family members, no one exactly doesn't feel safe enough to say the war has been ended or this ceasefire, it can be permanent. There are various of the reasons. The Islamic Republic continue having this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, and or any other night there is an incident between Americans and Iranians in the southern water of Iran in Persian Gulf. And also we are seeing this talks hasn't went to anywhere since the ceasefire begins in April. If Israelis succeed to drag American to this confrontation, which Iranian today start that by attacking Israel, I believe then the dream of the peace and continuation of ceasefire is over. But the message of President Trump in Fox still is little promising, which he doesn't feel or wanted to drag again to this confrontation. And let's see if Israelis can obey to President Trump's demand and wouldn't done any retaliation tonight.
Camelia, can I talk about your support, your previous support for Donald Trump? Because you are a Democrat, I understand, who voted for Donald Trump in 2024, partly because he said he was going to be the president who ended wars, who was not going to get embroiled once again in the Middle East. Now, 100 days in, it looks like the US is in this quagmire, increasingly, in Iran. We've got an escalation again tonight, severe damage on your country. I'm sure huge concern for your family back there. How are you feeling now?
You referred to my op-ed at the Independent publications, which published yesterday. The feeling, my feeling as someone newly introduced to Republican Party as a sincere Democrat, which I believed President Trump promises, all his movement was America first, and there would be no war at anywhere and any ongoing war to be ended. It attracted me. I am like so many other young voters in New York City. There are lots of friends of mine were Democrats, and silently they cast their votes to President Trump. We can see this disappointment among of many people. I am not in a big scale to say I had an impact, but we could say people like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and many of those other strong media people who were supporting Trump has the same kind of the disappointment. We believe that was a third party. I'm talking about myself, President Trump representing, and this party is something between Republican and between Democrats, with all of these good initiatives of peace, democracy, and also end of the war at anywhere. But seeing in Iran attack like that, and we are seeing also there is a threat in another threats again imposing on Iran, and not only in Iran, I guess everywhere. We were saying still the war in Ukraine hasn't been ended. The US is not involved, but as a member of the NATO, we could say still we were having hope President Trump would end this war and would not open another frontier with Iran. Iran is quite far away from the US, and President Trump, of course, he wants to solve the nuclear fight, but we are not hearing, even during these talks with the Iranian regime, Iranian people be at somewhere of these negotiations to be considered. The trauma they suffered during January, when thousands of people has been killed demonstrating against the system, and following that, this heavy bombardment. You said you read the article. The nation has been threatened by President Trump to be set back to the Stone Age, and that wasn't a joke. And still, as of this minute we are speaking, I am receiving messages on my phone rapidly from Iran, everyone asking me, should they still awake and sitting and waiting for another confrontation and bombardment? Do I have any news? And so hopefully that wouldn't restart again. And President Trump chose the peace rather than continuing the war with Iran.
Camelia Entekabifet, an Iranian-American, worried about her family back home, of course, and reflecting also on American politics and on Donald Trump. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been holding talks in London with the leaders of Kiev's top European allies, the UK, France and Germany. Downing Street has given very little detail about the meeting, which was expected to explore what form a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia might have. It comes 2 days after Vladimir Putin rejected Kiev's offer of talks with Russia and a ceasefire. Mr. Zelensky said earlier that his discussions would focus on support for Ukraine and cooperation on air defence. The meeting comes as Ukrainian officials say a Russian drone hit a storage facility for spent nuclear fuel near the Chernobyl nuclear plant. They said a resulting fire was extinguished. The Ukrainian leader condemned what he called a vile Russian strike. In the UK, government delays in confirming its plans for future defence spending are damaging the country's credibility with allies, as well as its readiness for combat operations. Those are the findings of an influential committee of MPs. The Defence Investment Plan was due to be announced last year, but still hasn't been released. Here's our defence correspondent, Jonathan Beale.
The conflict in Ukraine's underlined the threat from Russia and the changing face of warfare. Long-range strikes and unmanned systems. Most casualties on the battlefield now caused by drones, not bullets or artillery. This week, the Prime Minister, visiting a UK drone factory, said we're now living in the most dangerous times. And yet, nearly 2 years into power, the government still hasn't published its Defence Investment Plan. MPs say that's damaging the UK's credibility with both allies and adversaries.
I think the Public Accounts Committee has got it absolutely right. It's going to be very difficult for the Prime Minister to look President Zelensky in the eye, and indeed his other allies, particularly Germany, when Britain has still failed to put together the Defence Investment Plan to back up the very good defence review Labour launched last year.
The government's promised to reverse what it calls the hollowing out of Britain's armed forces. It's committed to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of national income by next year. But it was supposed to set out how that money will be spent last autumn. The Public Accounts Committee is scathing about the costs of the delay, saying it's led to an inability to deter the UK's adversaries, to equip the armed forces for the modern battlefield, and that it's undermined the UK's credibility with allies and the defence industry. Ministers insist it'll be published by next month.
The Defence Investment Plan will be absolutely clear before NATO. The work is going in to get this right. And as we speak, 1,400 contracts have been new contracts on defence granted since we came to government. 270 billion we are spending on defence by the end by the next election.
But the MOD is still trying to fill a black hole in its budget. Nor does the recent past fill MPs with confidence. They question whether the Army's new Ajax vehicle, already 10 years late, will ever be fit for combat. nor has the MOD got to grips with the rising costs of its nuclear weapons programme. When the Defence Investment Plan is finally published, MPs say it had better be good. Jonathan Beale, BBC News.
Iran's World Cup footballers have arrived in Mexico as a row continues over visas and access to the stadia where they will play. These are pictures of the team's bus leaving the airport in Tijuana on Sunday. All three of Iran's first round games are in the United States, but players have been told they have to fly in and out of the country on the day of their matches. Their first game is on the 16th of June. Well, the World Cup begins on Thursday, and the Scotland squad have just landed in Charlotte in North Carolina, which will be their base for the tournament. Chris McLaughlin is at the airport for us. Chris.
Hi Mark, yes, good afternoon or good evening I should say, from very hot, very sticky Charlotte in North Carolina, where, as you say, just a few hours ago Scotland touched down here. This will be their home from home for as long as they can remain in this tournament. No big party on the tarmac, no fanfare for the players. I think head coach Steve Clarke very keen to keep this squad's focused. They flew in from New Jersey, where yesterday they had their final warm-up friendly match, a 4-0 win against Bolivia. But remember, it's been 28 years in the waiting for Scotland. 2 big friendly wins in the lead up to today, and safe to say that so far preparations are going well.
That's what we've got to believe, that's what we're working towards, that's what we're working hard every single day for, trying to get used to the heat, trying to get used to the humidity. It's going to be really difficult, there's no denying that, but we've ticked every box so far, and we need to, keep ticking the boxes to make sure we're ready. But I believe in the squad, I believe in the quality we've got, I believe in the togetherness we've got, but we have to go show it, and we have to go show it in the biggest stage, and I think that's what we're excited to go and try and do when the games come.
Now, Scotland's first training session will be tomorrow morning, just a few miles from where we are at the moment, the home of Charlotte FC. As I said earlier on, it is very hot, very humid here, 32 degrees it was today. Head coach Steve Clarke told us that's exactly what he wanted. That's why they came to North Carolina. I think that also, and the fact this is not a World Cup city, it's a quieter place. There's not that many people around here that actually know that Scotland are in town. But of course, given that almost 3 decades wait for Scotland, the team, Steve Clarke, Scotland in general, wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Chris, 32 degrees, a bit of a shock to the Scottish system, I would have thought. So just a week to go before Scotland's opening match against Haiti. Thanks very much indeed, Chris McLaughlin there in North Carolina. Now, let's turn to Armenia. Early results from polling stations there suggest that the party of the Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, is on track to win Sunday's parliamentary election. Mr. Pashinyan's main challenger has been a billionaire businessman who made his fortune in Russia. Moscow had already been accused of running a disinformation campaign against the incumbent. And Vladimir Putin has warned Armenia that if it moves too far towards Europe, it could suffer the same fate as Ukraine. Our correspondent Rayhan Dimitri, who is in the capital Yerevan for us, explained the geopolitical tussle at the heart of the election.
This country never held elections that were so closely watched by the outside world. In the run-up to these elections, Russia imposed a number of bans on Armenian produce. Armenia is a member of the Russia-led economic union, so that is going to hurt the economy here. Russia has also warned against Armenia forging closer ties with the EU. But only last month, Yerevan hosted over 40 European leaders for the European Political Community Summit. Right in this square, we've seen President Macron going for his morning jogs. And of course, those visits by European leaders were seen as an endorsement of the incumbent Nikol Pashinyan. There has also been a very direct endorsement by the US President Donald Trump, who only last week posted on Truth Social urging people in Armenia to make Armenia great again.
That's Rayhan Dimitri in Armenia. Well, it's been a busy old day of elections because Peruvians have been voting in the runoff of their presidential election. All indications are of a tight race between Conservative candidate Keiko Fujimori, who is the daughter of the former president strongman Alberto Fujimori, and the left-wing contender Roberto Sanchez. Peru has had 8 presidents in 10 years. Today's vote is at a time of growing concern over organised crime linked to illegal gold mining and with the country's murder rate doubling in the past 5 years. Our South America correspondent Ione Wells has more from the capital, Lima.
Well, this is a radically different choice. On the one hand, you have Keiko Fujimori, who is very much a right-wing conservative. She's the daughter of the late Alberto Fujimori, who is known by his supporters as someone who had a tough crackdown on violent insurgencies, brought stability to the economy, but he was also jailed for human rights abuses, and some of her critics fear that she plans to replicate some of his hardline policies to tackle rising crime in the country. She's also promised a free market approach to the economy, attracting more investment from the US, for example. Roberto Sanchez, on the other hand, is very much on the left politically. He wants to expand the state. He wants to increase state ownership of some of the country's natural resources. Some of his supporters feel that it is unfair that Peru is very rich in resources like gold, like copper, but feel that that doesn't trickle down to ordinary people. So he is planning for an increased role for the state in the country's natural resources, but also reforming things like the tax system and also the constitution too. So politically, these are two very, very different candidates. And it's interesting, some people I've been speaking to here over the last couple of days feel, as a result, like this isn't necessarily a choice that they are all happy with. Many people didn't vote for either candidate in the first round of this election. It's one that is deeply polarising with two very different visions for the country. And I think the fear among some is that neither will necessarily be able to command, as a result, a majority support of the entire country, even if this is the choice people are faced with in the second round.
Ione Wells in Lima. Now, Waterloo Bridge in central London was turned into a temporary cricket pitch today. It was to mark the Women's T20 World Cup, which starts in England on Friday. Captains from all 12 teams involved came to the wicket. Tolu Adeoye was there.
An iconic London landmark like you've never seen it before. For a time today, Waterloo Bridge was taken over by stumps and wickets to celebrate the upcoming ICC Women's T20 World Cup.
Cricket right here in the heart of London on Waterloo Bridge. We've taken it over. This tournament is all about breaking women's cricket into the mainstream. So that's all about scale and status. And I don't think there's any bigger way to make that amazing first impression about what we're trying to do than taking over the bridge today.
Women and girls from cricket clubs across the country were invited for the launch.
It's really excited, and it's really cool to see like all of the captains of like all of the players, and yeah.
How much are you looking forward to the tournament?
I'm really looking forward to it, and it's going to be so good, and I hope England win.
Wonderful event to celebrate all the women sports people, and this aspect of closing a bridge, such a busy bridge for them, is definitely a tribute.
The tournament is every 2 years. This is the biggest so far, with 12 teams competing. New Zealand are the current champions, but England will be looking to challenge, with it being on home soil.
We've won all of the home tournaments that we've had here, so no pressure on me, but there you go. Yeah, really excited to be able to play in front of our home fans, and yeah, so excited for the tournament to kick off.
Matches are taking place at grounds across the country, with the semi-finals at the Oval and the final at Lord's. Organisers hope this spectacle in the heart of London will draw more people into watching the real thing over the coming weeks.
Surely playing cricket on Waterloo Bridge is the highlight of your career. It's definitely up there.
Tolu Adeoye, BBC News.
Lovely. Well, from the heart of London, let's go live now to the heart of New York, because the stars of stage are hitting the blue carpet for Broadway's biggest night, the 79th Annual Tony Awards, which are beginning at the Radio City Musical Hall in New York City. The event honours plays and musicals staged on Broadway. You can see there some of the stars arriving, getting their snaps in front of the waiting media. Aubrey Plaza there, adjusting her dress. No doubt there'll be a lot of commentary on the dress sense of the stars, of course. Michael Paulson is the theatre reporter for the New York Times, and he told me who he thought were the main contenders at this evening's ceremony.
Yeah, so this has been a bit of a bumpy season for Broadway, and a lot of the shows will be new to viewers who are watching the Tonys tonight. But the two big musicals that are leading the race for Best New Musical are Schmigadoon, which is based on an Apple TV series about a couple that gets trapped in a village where people burst into song, and The Lost Boys, which is a stage adaptation of a 1980s movie about teen vampires. As you mentioned, the Best Musical Revival category features Ragtime, a classic musical about American history, as well as a completely reimagined version of Cats, now called Cats the Jellicle Ball, which is now about queer ballroom culture, not about a group of felines in a junkyard.
I'm reading here that actress June Squibb could become the oldest Tony winner if she wins. She was nominated at the age of 96. And she's surpassed Lois Smith, who was 90 when she won in 2021. I mean, the Tonys are full of these amazing individuals and amazing kind of history-making moments, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. The June Squibb story is a crazy one. I mean, 96, and she did a play this season called Marjorie Prime, and she was fantastic, and I think there's a lot of affection for her. There are a number of nominees in their 80s, and she's in her 90s, and it's really heartening to see the commitment and the strength that these performers are bringing to these roles.
Michael, for those of us who are not lucky enough to be immersed in the glitz and glamour of Broadway like you are, give us a sense of how big the Tonys are and how important they are as well to a play's success, to a show's success.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the Tonys are a huge marketing opportunity for Broadway. Of course, they're an important moment for celebrating the art and the artists, but they're also the biggest audience that Broadway has in any given year. There are millions of people across the US and ultimately across the world who watch this broadcast. And it's how they're introduced to what's now playing on Broadway and then in cities across this country and around the world as they tour. So it's a really important way of attracting audiences. And I also like to remind people that the Tonys play an important role in inspiring future artists. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed actors or writers or producers who tell me that when they were kids, they watched the Tony Awards at home on TV and that it helped cement for them their love for this art form.
Michael, if you were handing out an award tonight, who would you give it to?
Well, I'm not a critic, so I can't answer that question, but I'd give it to everyone who just works so hard to bring all of these plays and musicals to the audiences that just eat them up.
Michael Paulson there, a theatre reporter for the New York Times. Well, let's just see those live pictures from New York as the stars continue to arrive for those Tony Awards. The singer Pink is one of the hosts. And it's going to honour plays and musicals staged on Broadway. There's going to be an eclectic bunch of performers. Flying vampires, voguing cats, a sweet transvestite and a Celine Dion send-up. Stay with us here on BBC News. Much more coming up.
Hello there. The weather pattern for the second week of June is not really changing a great deal, so still very unsettled. It's going to be quite cool as well. Breezy at times over the week ahead. There will be some showers or some long spells of rain. All our weather continues to come in from the Atlantic. This low pressure will feed in some showers following this weather front, which has been bringing some rain already today. And that is continuing to work its way into more of England and Wales overnight, clearing away from Northern Ireland and perhaps Western Scotland away from these showers. Here temperatures will be down to 8-9 degrees, but elsewhere with cloud and some rain around more widely, temperatures down to 12-13 degrees. We start with the cloud and rain. It will push its way towards the south southeast, and following on from that, we're going to get some sunshine. There will be some showers, particularly building through the day in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. And before the rain finally clears away from East Anglia in the southeast in the afternoon, there could be some heavy and thundery bursts. Whilst we're introducing some sunshine and showers mainly in the west, we're all going to find temperatures lower on Monday. It's going to be a cooler, fresher feeling day. And we're into the same cooler, fresher air for the middle part of the week. Low pressure close by and a run of westerly winds. Now on Tuesday, there'll be some sunshine, but showers are never too far away. They'll develop more widely, some of them heavy with some thunder as well. And on Wednesday, most of the showers will be in the east.
Like me, Barcelona has never been shy to